Peacemakers Horrors of War is a cooperative game set in a world of anthropomorphic animals who are always fighting against each other. But luckily enough, we have some people who care, and that would be you the player or players, and you're trying to manipulate the war so that the two sides will stop fighting and will hopefully reach a mutually acceptable agreement. So you don't want one side to completely capitulate to the other. The game is scenario based. You have 6 scenarios and they're played on these 2 books basically, each showing half of a map and the card display for the card decks of the various factions that you're going to use. So here I set up the first scenario. Again, you're going to need both of these, which is the easiest and a bit of an intro scenario. So the bottom part of the map, again, gives you the units that you're going to use, the stats of those units. So for example, these units here have that range when they attack, range of 2, attack of 3, and 5 life points. You will attach the wooden miniatures of each faction to differently shaped bases to indicate what they are. So I know that this is the B unit of that faction with those stats, and this one has the same shape, but has this other miniature, so he's the leader, and so has these other stats, a lot tougher to take down. And then we have, of course, the battlefield itself, where you will place your miniatures. The factions will always be facing a specific edge of the hex in which they are, because there are effects that may move them forward, backward, or even rotate them in some scenarios. And you are the peacemakers, and so the orientation of your pieces doesn't matter so much. Couple of other things. You have water you can move into, out of, through normally, but you cannot build fortifications. And a big thing in the game will be indeed to build fortifications if you feel that a side is taking too much of a beating and they may decide to capitulate thoroughly, then you help them fortify. You will also have tokens representing the hits, the wounds that the sides take, and you simply place it next to them if a unit has been wounded. You have, these are the symbols on the map indicating areas that offer some stealth, and so units in those hexes can only be attacked by adjacent enemies. You have hexes that provide defense, that little shield there, and also hexes that influence your motivation. That torch there is your motivation. The general idea is this: you will perform actions and we will see how, and then they perform actions, and those actions will inflict wounds, will occasionally remove units, and both elimination of units and other actions described on cards will affect the morale of the two sides. If the morale of either side ever goes down to 0, that side completely surrenders to the other. It's not a great piece, and so you, the peacemaker, lose the game. You win the game if both sides have their morale in the green area but not at the bottom of the morale track. This way, they're both tired and annoyed enough, and they're done with fighting, and hopefully that will cause them to seek peace, and that's how you win the game. You want both of these markers in the green area, anywhere in the green areas at the end of a round. When units are eliminated, they go here, and that also affects the morale of the corresponding party. They lose 1 morale point, and also you get the horrors, the traumas of war. Whenever a unit is eliminated, you take a horror card and you put it on top of the resource deck. That is where you have the cards that you will use to perform actions. Each round you will receive 4 cards that need to be split as evenly as possible among the players, and if a horror or more cards came with it, then you resolve it and you split the remaining ones as evenly as possible among all the players, deciding who gets more and who gets less. So you will have your cards in front of you, and as I said, also the various factions will have their cards, their decks of cards. And each faction has 2 decks of cards representing, well, each card represents half of an order. So these decks regulate the actions of the factions, the warring factions themselves. The way it works is this: players will start their turn by performing actions on the board. To perform those actions, you will need to spend cards. A lot of effects will only affect nearby armies or nearby units. If you use a card for the printed effect, also other effects will affect mainly nearby units, which means units in the same space where you are. So right now, that unit is nearby this Peacemaker here. You can play a card for its printed effect. You can play a card to survey, which means you can look at the top card on a deck of a nearby army. So that Peacemaker right now is nearby these guys here. By surveying, by using a card with that symbol, discarding it for it, I can look at either cards. And it's really important to do so because then you know what they're doing. A side who is already ahead, you find a card here that allows them to inflict a lot of damage, then you want to figure out ways to prevent that damage. So peeking at these decks can be extremely important. Or you can discard a card to move, the number of spaces equal to the number of boots on the cards. As you can see, sometimes a card will have some symbol, so if you play a card for the effect next to that symbol, you get to draw another card, so that's pretty neat. You can spend a card to build a fortification, and fortifications will reduce the damage that is inflicted on that unit. You can also delegate, pass this card to another Peacemaker if they are in the same space as you. So as you can see, a lot of flexibility for cards, including the fact that also some cards have better powers if they're used by specific characters. This character, for example, will offer more defense to the to nearby units if they play this card to give that temporary boost to that side. And this character here, if you play this card, will place more fortifications than standard. So it's a very neat and easy way to take care of unique powers or abilities. So this is pretty much the idea. You play your cards and you can save some cards from one turn to the other. Very often you will want to do that. And after you are done, well, they actually go and you simply reveal 2 cards for each side and you total their initiative. For example, right now this side has an initiative of 7.3 and this other side has an initiative of 5.2. The highest initiative goes first, and you simply resolve the card on the left and then the card on the right, and then you go to the other party. Say, for example, hey, if this order has the highest initiative, then you get +1 motivation. So they feel super excited about that, and they do have the highest initiative, so their morale goes up by 1. And then each macaw on a round base attacks. I'll show you the attacks, how that works. Attacks goes up to the range, and most units have a range of 2. Macaws with a round base attack. So first they attack the hex right in front of them. If they cannot find an enemy there, they look around clockwise. Still no enemies like in this case, then they look ahead 2 hexes, and if there is somebody there, they hit that person, otherwise they go around again clockwise. And that's how you determine the target of the attack. So this macaw is attacking at a range of 2, that is the target. They have a power of 3, they inflict up to 3 potential hits. If there's defense printed in the X, you take that into account, but this one doesn't have any, and so they simply, that unit will take 3 hits, getting it pretty close to be dead because they have 5 hit points. Had there been fortifications there, each fortification reduces 1 damage. So again, that attack, the main fit 3, no printed defense, 2 are prevented by the fortification. That unit takes a 1. This is it. This is how you play the game. Continue like this, alternating phases where you're playing cards to manipulate the battlefield. Then you resolve their actions in which and the units will move, attack, fortify, all sorts of effects will happen. You continue until one side completely dominates the other, in which case you, the Peacemaker, lose the game, or you're able to demoralize both sides kind of equally. They seek peace and you win the game. I like this game a lot. It is not often that you see something so inventive, so original, so different. At least I had never seen a cooperative game in which you're trying to do quite the same thing to keep the balance. Usually in other games you go all out one way and it's perfectly fine. I mean, say in Pandemic, of course, you spend too many resources just cleaning the board and you forget to do something else, so that is bad also. But the idea that you're really trying to keep some bad on both sides for long enough, it feels very fresh and different. And it is also such a different take on cooperative gaming, which usually you want to win the conflict. Here you really want to create a tie, which has some counterintuitive wrinkles to it, because at the beginning I was just fortifying everybody. I was just helping everybody until I realized that one side is ahead of the other. One side is stronger than the other. And so the other side is degrading. Their morale is degrading faster. I started playing the game. There's a card, food poisoning. It doesn't let you kill anybody, but you do inflict wounds on them. And I thought, why would you ever do that? And I realized, oh, wait a second. One side is way ahead than the other, and all of a sudden I'm pouring stuff in their food, they're feeling sick, and so the weaker side just comes in and gives them the coup de grace. Which is kind of weird, like, oh, we don't kill anybody, we're the peacemakers, we just make them sick enough that they'll get killed. Totally different concept. Which, however, mechanically is still interesting, because in so many other games you go out and you kill the bad guys. Here, after you maybe poison somebody, then you want to manipulate the deck so that the side that needs to inflict the final hit does so. They don't waste time doing other things. This other side doesn't get to recover. And something that is really nice, once you get the general idea that it's not about saving everybody all the time. Actually, matter of fact, is precisely helping one side to fall faster if they were doing very well. And all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, now this side is too much ahead. So there's a swinging of priorities there that makes for very imaginative, very different gameplay. I love how refreshing that felt. And from scenario to scenario, you do have very different interactions. I think they did an excellent job in giving you 6 scenarios that work very differently from one another. Some have 3 parties, and maybe in one party switches from one to the other. One scenario has a supporting party that does stuff from afar. Are you going to go all the way there to influence the supporter, or deal differently? One scenario, one side is climbing a mountain. Very cool. Most units in most scenarios have a range of 2 and they inflict 3 wounds, but you have the archers that can hit further. You have the frogs, they don't hit as hard, but they do other things. I'm not going to go into the details of the scenarios and the factions, because part of the fun, I believe, is to discover, in fact, what all these parties do and what the challenges of the scenarios are. Matter of fact, after maybe the first scenario, I would usually take the first turn doing absolutely nothing, simply collecting cards, because I wanted to see how do these armies operate, what is their twist, what is their spin, what are they good at, what are the liabilities. So as a peacemaker, I'm told, hey, there's gonna be this conflict. I go there, I study the battlefield, and I see, well, I don't want to start fortifying one side if it turns out they already have an advantage, or they move a lot, so they're gonna move out of those fortifications anyways. So much fun. so interesting and so different. It doesn't hurt that the game looks so good. These wooden animals, they really are adorable and they're thematic. The components are well designed. The box has nice inserts. The production is excellent. The rulebook is very well laid out and clear. You got 6 scenarios, so different from one another. And again, you have very exciting, refreshing gameplay, different in each scenario. The difficulty, I played all 6 scenarios at the basic difficulty. I won the first 4. I lost the 5th. Sorry, iguanas, I couldn't help you. But you look like you were winning. And so I helped the frogs a lot, and then the iguanas fell from grace so fast that I couldn't rescue them. The 6th scenario I won, but it was just so close. And you can have different difficulties, different levels of difficulty. I played at the basic level, and maybe predictable. The earlier ones were easy, the other ones not so much, and I could ramp up the difficulty to make it more challenging. I played all scenarios solo using 2 peacemakers, and it works absolutely perfectly that way, no problem. So you got a really good looking cooperative solo friendly game about making peace. That doesn't always mean being nice. Indeed, it may mean just looking at the bigger picture. It's innovative, it's fun, it's unique, and I love it. I love Peacemakers.